Hey, today's episode is brought to you by sunsetlakecbd.com. Sunsetlakecbd.com. They have a wide array of CBD products. This is started out as a family farm that provided a dairy for Ben and Jerry's. And then about 2018, these guys decided to branch out a little bit and they started to grow hemp, and they did so 100% pesticide free. They did it with organic fertilizers only. With the help of the University of Vermont, they were practicing, and they do practice regenerative agriculture. Also have great business practices, $15 minimum wage and for everybody. And the company is primarily employee owned, and they have great CBD products. They've got, well, we all have our favorites, I feel like, around here, but I've turned so many people on to the tincture. This, for me, has been a godsend in terms of getting rest and sleeping, frankly. They just came out with the CBD chocolate fudge, and I can tell you it's delicious, and it's a different experience when you eat it. Takes about a half an hour to kick in, but you can check that out. It's delicious. Makes a great gift. They also have CBD infused coffee. Right now, I think they have a Costa Rican blend that is my weekend brew. They have a salve with arnica that I use for sore muscles, but for me, primarily, it's been really great for my eczema. And now they have all sorts of different flavors. Matt, have you checked this out? Matt is a big fan of the Smalls. What's the Smalls, Matt?
Yeah, I've been, especially the special sauce smalls. They're these little sort of pre-stemmed nugs that you can put right in your grinder and add a nice little CBD sort of kick to whatever you're grinding up.
I just am looking on this and I'm thinking I got to try the sampler flights, all 7 strains they have, because I can't quite figure out I'm the names are all Hawaiian haze. I don't know what that means. Super sour space candy. I don't. Do you know how to delineate, or is just you just get a random name for them?
Yeah, I know. I think it's probably based on scent, typically.
Oh.
But maybe there's a bit of the psychic effect of it.
All right. Well, they've learned, but there is no psychic effect, right? I mean, that's the thing. It is,
or the mood, I guess.
I smoked some of the pre-rolls, and you get a weird sort of physical mellowness, and you keep anticipating the psycho qualities, but they don't happen. Anyways, you gotta check it out. They're a great company, and we've gotten just great feedback about all of their products. sunsetlakecbd.com. They're fans of the show, so they made their coupon code left is best at sunsetlakecbd.com. It gets you 20% off. sunsetlakecbd.com. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Now, on with this program.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, March 5th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, voting on amendments begins in the Senate on the COVID-19 relief bill. This is after 10 hours of reading the bill out loud. Heather Parton, or Digby, will be here to discuss and more. Also, late negotiations warps the unemployment insurance in the bill. Meanwhile, in New York State, a report, Cuomo staff actively involved in covering up the nursing home deaths. Pope visits Iraq amidst fears COVID-19 spread. The Fed investigating the Capitol riot have records of communications between U.S. lawmakers and rioters. They have their cell phones, folks. Those things go two ways, incidentally. Manhattan DA race may lead to a sex work decriminalization. U.S. blocked Myanmar's junta's $1 billion Fed withdrawal. Juntas. And thousands in Mississippi are still without water after those storms. All that and more on today's program. I should also say later in the program, in the second half, Andy Kindler, comedian, will be joining us. In the meantime, I want to say welcome back to Emma Vigeland, who had a little back issue yesterday.
Yeah, a little back issue. It's contagious. Must be.
Apparently, like that happens every other week. I'm out with a back problem. You're out with a back problem.
I've never had this before, but it was an exercise injury. I'll just say that. I went a little too hard.
I think, the bottom line is that this is a very, in talking to and just reading what some mental health providers have been suggesting, the anxiety, the low grade anxiety of living in a pandemic for a year, I think it, impacts people in many different ways. And I think honestly, I would bet, this is purely speculation on my part, but I would bet that there's more physical maladies that people are having, even though in some ways we're less active.
Yeah,
it feels like we are.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very holistic view of health, that the
Thank you.
mind and the body are connected, and I would
Thank you very
agree.
much, Emma. I
Yes,
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Somebody finally noticed that I did have a holistic view of that. Folks, this is right now as we speak. There are senators in the Senate chambers. They are voting on amendments as we speak. There has been some negotiations. We'll talk to Digby about this that have happened in the past couple of hours about the unemployment insurance of the bill. It's a $1.9 trillion bill. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about with Heather Parton, or Digby, as you may know her, is the idea of the Republicans barely engaging in this fight. There does not seem to be any response from Republicans about this bill other than it's too big. And I'll tell you, I remember hearing this about the Affordable Care Act too. They went on and on about how many pages it was. The number of pages in the legislation is somehow an indication of that it's a bad piece of legislation. The other tact has been taking, do you know how much money this is? It could reach the sky. Here is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Cannot hear him. Let's try that one more time. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson.
Is, or $1.9 trillion. You have to use analogies. Again, the human mind really can't contemplate what a trillion is. I found this first analogy, my wife talked to me about it, in terms of time. So this one is simply talking about if I would give you, Madam President, $1 per second, how long would it take me to give you $1 million? When you see the chart here, it would take 11.6 days. Again, $1 per second. How much for $1 million in 11.6 days? Next question, how long would it take you to
Well, pause it for 1 second.
$1 billion?
Because I think we all can relate to the idea of somebody giving us $1 per minute, right? I mean, who amongst us has not been in a situation where we haven't gotten $1 per minute, where someone's handing you $1 per minute? We all go through this in our everyday lives where people are handing you $1 per minute.
Yeah,
Can I have my
just
change, please?
Stare
Yes,
into
you
each
can.
other's eyes.
Here's
stare
$1.
into each other's eyes, say nothing, and then hand each other dollars on a timer every minute.
Here's $1. And it's like when you go and you get that, 70, that $1.25, water at the bodega, and you give them a 20. It's just like you got 19 minutes almost, and it's just like this. Very relatable. It's a great metaphor, but continue.
Would it take you to accumulate $1 billion? Again, you do the math, you find out it would take 31.7 years. That's back when the Chinese had their protests in Tiananmen Square.
What?
So the next question is, what about $1 trillion? And this is what becomes mind-boggling.
I got news for you. It's already mind-boggling. Go ahead. Continue to play.
$1 every second. And I wanted to give you $1 trillion. It would take 31,688 years to give you $1 trillion.
Oh, thanks. Now I get it.
That takes us
This
back
is so much clearer to
beyond
me.
the last glaciation period, a period in time when Wisconsin was under a mile-thick glacier. By the way, quick little aside for my colleague from Rhode Island. Since that point in time, about 20,000 years ago, the water level in the Bay of San Francisco has increased 390 feet. Now that's global warming. That's a rise in the sea level, but that's what happened through natural causes. But that was an aside.
What?
What?
So how long does it accumulate $1.9 trillion? 60,000 years.
Wow.
Over 60,000 years.
He's really
Again,
mixing
put that in
metaphors.
context,
Oh my
the
gosh.
human race began to develop language about 50,000 years ago. So that's the time analogy.
Really
Another
makes you
way of looking
think.
at this is through
This
distance
is,
and volume.
I have to say, is he going to,
here's
all
the
right, pause it for 1 second. Well, we just like, this is, and I apologize. I think I said $1 a minute, and it's actually $1 a second,
Oh,
right? $1 a second. They're handing out to you really, really quick.
yeah.
So you get your change back super quick. So let me, so this is how Ron Johnson anticipates his constituents are going to talk about how horrific this bill is. And they're going to say, like, do you realize that this bill is like the age when there was ice covering all of like Green Bay and also like the sea rise in San Francisco with all the money? If you put all the money in the Bay of San Francisco, the sea would rise.
Well, what happened to it touching the sky? I mean,
Well,
like,
that's coming up next. See,
right,
now he just did temporal, and now it's spatial.
yeah. So it's
Temporal, spatial.
very clear.
I brought a dollar bill to just demonstrate its thickness, but the thickness of a dollar bill is 4.3 thousandths of an inch thick.
Right.
Super easy for me to
no,
visualize.
I can imagine that.
How
Everybody,
much
who
$1
amongst us can't imagine 4.00.0043 inches? Of course.
Yeah, and
we all can.
why would these trillions have to be stacked in $1 bills? And what does that prove? I'm not sure.
I do appreciate the fact that he realized at one point, like, oh, wait a second. If I really wanted to explain this in a way that people could imagine it, I would bring the bill. I would bring the dollar bill. Like he's saying, the human mind can't abstractly appreciate how much $1.9 trillion is. But I got news for you. The human mind also can't abstractly appreciate how thick 0.0043 inches are.
He really just needed to say a dollar bill because that's a little bit more attached to everybody's reality than the metric thickness of
But he
a dollar.
wanted to show that he could do math.
Yeah.
So continue.
And knows history.
Yeah.
Let's start with $1 million. If you stacked $1 million bills on top of each other, they would stack up to be 358 feet high. You can see the calculation here.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Right. Where's the
350
calculation for
that's about a
358?
30
I don't see that.
35-foot story building. So how big would a stack of $1 billion bills be?
Well, why would you do it in dollar bills? Why wouldn't you just do a
67.86
check?
miles.
Why
For
would you
one
do
point-
it in gold bars?
There's something called the
That's a
the
good
Parton
point.
line. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That's the point where the atmosphere ends and outer space begins. That's the 62 miles.
We got Neil deGrasse Tyson over
I
here.
don't think we need to see any more. The point is, I think this sets the table for the conversation with Heather, and that is there is no response
No.
from the Republicans.
But he did try today, it was yesterday going into 2 a.m. this morning, for the entire bill to be read by poor Senate aides. I mean, Axios framed it as Ron Johnson forced the Senate aides until 2 a.m. to read, how long is that bill? 628 pages.
He did indeed. He said you got to
Because-
read the whole thing.
I'm shocked that he didn't stack 628 pages on top of each other and then show us first the thickness of the paper. I wonder how that compares to the thickness of the dollar bill. I want to visualize it too. Maybe he could use like some sort of cardboard paper in order to make his point more effective. But I needed that visualization because now I don't know how I feel about the stimulus package.
And here's the most ridiculous part about it. At the end of all that, you imagine this huge stack of $1 bills, and then he basically, the implication is, and all of this is going directly to the American public to help them. Isn't
Yeah,
that
not
horrific?
to Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking to Heather Parton or Digby. Folks, today's program is sponsored in part by Freshly. I've told this story many times before. I'm going to tell it again. A lot of reasons why you might order Freshly. Obviously, dinner time can be a little bit chaotic with Freshly. It's super easy. Freshly's chefs take care of your meals a few nights a week, takes the pressure off of you. In my case, the way I was introduced to Freshly was we're helping out my mom. She's, getting up there and having some issues. And we wanted to make sure that she was eating properly. We looked around, my sisters and I, for the best service, like the best one we could find. We decided on Freshly. We sent her the food. But the thing is, my mom would not be happy if she thought we were paying for her meals. And so we told a little white lie. This is a couple of years ago, that they were sponsoring the show and they were giving me more or less like a lifetime of free meals, which I should tell you is not the case. And, but my mom was like, oh, okay, in that case. And she loved it. She got like every time she would get the peppercorn steak, I imagine they still have that. She would say, she would literally call me and be like, this is great. I'm telling all my friends. And I'm so happy that they support your show. And, you don't feel great about having to maintain that fiction, but your mom's eating well. And then just coincidentally, they found the show and they wanted to support it. So I was very happy to do it. And what they do is they offer these chef-made, nutrient-packed, delicious meals. They deliver them directly to your door, and there's no cooking required. Your meals arrive cooked and fresh every week. You stick them in the fridge. You keep them stocked. You skip the trip to the store or the takeout or whatever it is. Ordering is super easy. You go to freshly.com. You choose from over 30 meals. They have the sausage baked penne or chicken pesto bowl and the steak peppercorn. Freshly can fit your lifestyle. They have a variety of plans and meals to pick from that works for your needs. And now for our listeners, you can try Freshly for just $6.16 per meal. Your meals are ready to heat and enjoy in 3 minutes. Right now, Freshly's offering our listeners $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/majority. Stop stressing about dinner. Go to freshly.com/majority for $40 off your first 2 orders. That's freshly.com/majority for $40 off your first 2 orders. And this is another product that we've used around here. ZipRecruiter. Finding great candidates for your job can be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You can post your job on some, message board, but what does it do there? Just sits there. Well, with ZipRecruiter, they go out and they find candidates. ZipRecruiter, and you can try it now for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. Like I say, ZipRecruiter does the work for you. When you post a job on ZipRecruiter, it gets sent out to over 100 top job sites with one click. And then ZipRecruiter's matching technology finds people with the right skills and experience for your job and actively invites them to apply. How do I know this? Because Brendan. That's how we got Brendan on the show. ZipRecruiter. We went out and grabbed them practically. We had a ton of qualified candidates, but Brendan was just, it was like somebody like worked him up in a laboratory to work on this show. So while other services may overwhelm you with applications to sift through, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for, the needle in the haystack. In fact, ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. Right now, you can go to ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority, MAJORITY, majority. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. And also, today is March 5th. It is a very special day for me because it is my sister Julie's birthday.
Oh,
And
happy birthday, birthday, Julie. Birthday, Julie.
She has been a huge help on this program, does a lot of the sort of administrative work on the program. She's also been spending a lot of time taking care of my mom. And I'm very, very grateful for her as a sister. And so I want to give her one of these. Also, one other birthday shout out. This is happening on March 7th, which happens to be my son's birthday, coincidentally. But I get this email from Jess. Hey, team Majority Report. It's my wonderful partner Shay's 36th birthday on Sunday, March 7th. And a birthday shout out on the Friday 5th episode would mean so much to him. Here's a photo of Shay in full pandemic super dad form wearing his beloved Posit t-shirt with our 9-month-old daughter. You ready for this? Mila. What a coincidence.
Wow.
He shares my son's birthday and he has a daughter named Mila. I promise you, we did not know Sam's daughter was named Mila when we decided on her name. Just a beautiful, strange coincidence. Well, maybe he secretly knew and didn't tell me when I chose the name. Good job, Shay from Vancouver, and a happy birthday to you as well. All right. Want to welcome back to the show the proprietor of the Uber blog Hullabaloo and writer from Salon.com, Heather Parton or Digby. Heather, here she comes.
Here I am.
Thanks for joining us, Heather.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So there, we're planning to talk about obviously the COVID relief bill, and there has been sort of like some late breaking news on it in terms of a negotiation that happened with the unemployment insurance. Do you want to update us on that, Shai?
I think you should.
Okay.
Since I am not up to date on
All right.
it.
This is fairly late breaking. The bill, as it was yesterday, had $400 a week extra, starting presumably in mid-March. 400 week extra federal supplement to unemployment insurance until through the month of August. They have now cut it down to $300, but extended it through the month of September. And they have made the first $10,200 tax-free, and that's retroactive. We knew that there was problems with the bill. So dollar for dollar, it's more or less a wash, but let's just start with this because it's also why we don't have the $15 minimum wage. And it's also why, we don't have the $600 in particular expansion of unemployment benefits, which was wildly successful during the first 4 months of the pandemic, 5 months of the pandemic. they are very afraid, and by they I mean sort of like the, you know, the business corporatists are very afraid that this discourages people to go to work, that extra $100. And so they're willing to spend the same amount of money. Some level, you know, people who have been unemployed now are going to be subsidizing the expansion for unemployment people later. And the tax fix was pretty important because you don't want to surprise, you know, $1,000, you know, $1,500, $500 tax bill. But there is something really sick and been omnipresent in some of these lawmakers' minds of like, you don't want to encourage people, you know, you want to like push them out the door to work in this instance.
Exactly. And, you know, this has been from the very beginning, even in the, you know, the early days when they first started the, you know, the mitigation efforts and closed down businesses and what have you, that when they started to open them up back in the spring, when the virus was still raging and we were all kind of, you know, at sixes and sevens, not really knowing what was going to happen, you'd get these news reports of business owners going, I just can't find anybody to work. And I remember thinking at the time, yeah, no kidding. You know, there's a virus raging through the population. I mean, no, people are being told not to leave their house. What do you expect here? So there's been this sort of thing going through the whole thing that, well, we're being a little too generous and people aren't, you know, coming back to work. And, you know, I have no doubt. I mean, that probably there are some people who did a little bit better on unemployment than they did working at their minimum wage job. And that just argues for the fact that we need a higher minimum wage, right? I mean, this is, to me, that sort of, if this is true, that people would rather be on unemployment than actually have a job and, you know, have a future and do what we all do, which is live out in society and do things, that tells you something about the job market, not about unemployment or about these people's character. Now, you know, you mentioned the tax thing, and that was very important and politically wise of the Democrats to do this, because this was sort of something that bubbled up over just recently in the last couple of weeks when they realized that people were going to be hit with a big tax bill because they for their unemployment. And it was said up front that would happen, but still, you know, you're applying for unemployment. That's really not that's the last thing you're thinking about, right? That you're going to have a tax bill, especially people who are working at the lower end of the you know, economic scale, who are used to getting a refund and then suddenly be hit with a bill. I mean, that's a terrible political situation, and it's just wrong. I mean, they shouldn't be punished for, you know, for losing their jobs in the middle of a pandemic. So that was smart to do it. The one thing I think is really strange, and I mentioned this to you the other day, when they did this adjustment in it for the, you know, the limits on who could get the $1,400 and raised it in a number of areas to the point where I think we decided it was something like 12 million minimum number of people who were not going to get the benefit that they thought they were going to get. And one of the things they asked somebody, you know, well, are you going to move that over into the into UI, which kind of made sense. You know, if you're going to save money here, at least give it to the people who are unemployed, right? I mean, so you're worried about some, you know, upper middle class person getting money that they don't need and just putting it in their savings account. Why not take that money and put it into the unemployment portion? And as you mentioned to me, this may have been a turf thing of some sort, that it was in the wrong committees or they had some kind of limits on which committees could do it. That seems like kind of an arcane problem. But nonetheless, the idea being that if you're going to save money here, at least put it into something meaningful for the people who really need it. And they said, well, no, it's really not enough to make that worthwhile.
Right.
Which tells you it was arbitrary to begin with. It was just some kind of a compromise for the sake of compromise. And now here we have them actually lowering the weekly amount, which perhaps instead of doing that, they could have just, you know, or at least put the money in there somehow to somehow benefit. So, because you say it's a wash, so they didn't obviously do that. So I don't really know. I mean, all of this seems like, you know, people coming in and needing to have some input and getting.
I do think it is this notion that there is a belief that you are, well, and it may be the case, like you say, there may be some people who are like, you know what, I'm going to stay. I mean, let's be clear. The way you get on unemployment is that you lose your job.
Right.
So you were working and you lose your job. So it's not like, you know, people have the option of, hey, I can either work at this job I'm at or I can get unemployment. No, it's you lose your job. You can't quit and go get unemployment. That means you lost your job. And then the question is like, how quickly are people going back to work at that point? Now, the idea that there's going to be, it's conceivable if, you're saying like, okay, I'm worried that this might inhibit people to go back to work in March of next year. But this isn't, this doesn't last that long. Even into September, it's like, if people are not going back to work, a big part of it is probably they're a little nervous to go back to work. And the idea that, I think there is a genuine concern that like, hey, this could actually increase how much we have to pay people to come back to work. Right. That's what it really is about, is that these people who are, so the idea of spending the same amount of money is not the issue. The idea is that we don't want any given person to get that much, because that will soften, that will strengthen essentially the workers' bargaining power in the context of their relationship with employers. We might want them to have a certain amount of economic anxiety that's going to, get them off the couch, even though they're like, COVID or electric bill. Well, I got to pay the electric bill, so I'll just risk the COVID. This is a real problem, obviously, at least, enough members of the Democratic Party have. And we should say we should say that we're stating this with the understanding that if one of those two senators in Georgia lost, that we would not be having this conversation. This conversation would be about how Mitch McConnell is preventing any more unemployment insurance, period, end of story. Never mind talking about 1,400, all of that this would all be moot at that point. So it is, I just want to make that clear that, we're expressing it with that understanding. The Republicans are not engaging in this whatsoever. All right, let me just go down some of what's in this bill so that people have a sense of it. If you are a middle-class family of 4, in fact, this applies to 86% of the country. If you are a middle-class family of 4, you will get $5,600 in cash from the U.S. government from this. All the kids will be getting the full $1,400 as opposed to earlier iterations. When the $1,200 checks went out, I think kids only got $600. So you're going to get $5,600. But that cutoff, like you mentioned, it falls off the cliff if you make over $80,000. You make $80,000 in one, you get zero, as opposed to earlier iterations where it was closer to, it was at $100,000. And there's a similar dynamic. $75,000 is, up to $75,000, you get the money as an individual. $80,000, nothing. For a family of, for a family, it's $160,000. 17 million people, they suspect, are not going to get payments who got payments last time. The flip side of that is that there's about 20 million adult dependents who will be getting payment checks. But your fewer families are going to get it. Let's put it that way, or individuals. Like I say, 86% of the people, before they put that cap on it, it would have been 91% of the people. The IRS is also going to pay a child benefit. Every kid under 6 gets $3,600 per child. Between 6 and 18, $3,000 per child, and it's going to be spread out over the course of the year. Now, this only exists for a year, but there's a lot of Democrats who want to try and make this permanent. We're getting closer to the idea. That's what's fascinating about this whole process over the past year, is that this conversation would have been unimaginable.
Absolutely.
In September of 2019, regardless of who was president, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it would have been unthinkable. The idea that we're even discussing this idea. And by the way, let's not forget Mitt Romney came in. I mean, a Republican came in with a child support bill. this is a new thing, and it's suddenly the idea that the government can do things and that it can provide material support to people. And there are studies coming out. There was one this week that just came out suggesting that there was an experimental program, I think it was in Stockton, California, where they gave $500 a month to
The mayor out there was a real champ. He got unseated in a very controversial race, but go ahead.
Right. Well, he was trying this. I mean, they had, large pockets of poverty in the city, and they decided to do this experimental program. And what ended up happening was, if you gave the $500 a month to families that were suffering from, either at low wage jobs or were unemployed, a lot of dysfunction, it made a huge difference, as one might expect. It's $500 that they didn't have before, but it ended up leading many of them to get full-time jobs and, become more, participate more in, the normal kind of, working and social sort of life that they had been denied. It's just money, I mean, it just turned out that just that little bit of cash, or what we would think of maybe as being a small amount of cash, isn't really that little. If you've got rent that, could pay half your rent, I mean, that could make a huge difference. And so these ideas, this kind of thinking, I mean, the fact that the government, and, you have to even look back at the Republicans, I have to say, I was surprised that back in the spring that they came, that they all voted for the original COVID relief plan. I mean, that emergency, I think, drove everybody into, sort of, my God, that everything's falling apart here. But on the other hand, they're not usually adverse to making people suffer. And of course, they came out, not shortly after that, saying, well, we got to reopen and get businesses going. And they've been very reluctant to do anything since then. But even so, that idea of relief, and it's not just stuff like tax credits and, we'll give relief to the banks or whatever, and I mean, there was that aspect of it, the PPE loans, that was a big part of the original COVID relief plan, but direct relief to people, sending them checks, depositing money in their account and saying, here it is, no questions asked. We just need to make sure that people have this money so that A, they can live, and B, that the economy isn't going to completely crater because nobody has any money and nobody's spending. So, I mean, these ideas, I mean, this is real kind of fundamental, hardcore Keynesian economics. When the economy is crashing, the government's job at that point is to intervene and throw money around. It's really not complicated. You just got to get it out there, throw it out there. And the American, our economic system is fully capable of doing that. And they did it. So now what we're seeing is this kind of idea, as you point out, that the government has a role to play here in keeping the economy going, in providing relief, in, if anything, this idea that, well, if we give them too much money, they won't work. As it turns out, it looks like it's the opposite. That if people are given, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's sort of just, priming the pump, I guess, for individuals, not the economy. But as individuals, you get a little money, then you kind of go, okay, maybe I can go out. I remember there was some guy I read the other day who said, I got to take time off of my second job, my second part-time job, to go look for a full-time job. I mean, that's the kind of thing a little money can allow you to do, right?
Right. Well,
go ahead.
on, Sam. Yeah, I mean, to your point about the Republican, the amount of panic in the passage of the CARES Act can't be overstated, and what we were all experiencing. But part of what also made it easier for Republicans to pass that was the amount of giveaways to corporate America, and how we basically, I say that we essentially socialized the stock market and markets for a long time, and allowed that part of our economy to flourish, while people were in dire straits. And then they had no problem in waiting until the 11th hour to pass something in December, which was woefully insufficient. But I'm curious what you think the role the media has had in terms of making the Republican position basically untenable when they're trying to oppose this $1.9 trillion stimulus, because, outside of Ron Johnson, who we covered earlier in the program, it's been pathetic in terms of how their normal opposition, right?
That was pathetic too.
Right. Well, of course, but in terms of like how they usually respond with such strength, with such like vigor and aggressive opposition, it's gross, but they really have no leg to stand on here. And I think part of that is because the media after the Trump era, they don't buy it anymore. They don't buy the Republican BS. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. I think it's a hugely influential part of this entire argument. They are no longer being taken seriously because they don't behave seriously. They don't have, they are they used to call themselves, fatuously, by the way, the party of ideas, right? But there are no ideas. We know this because when they did the convention last summer, they didn't even put out a platform. They just said, we're supporting Donald Trump, and whatever he wants is fine with us. And what you see now, I mean, we're here. They are the opposition, and the media, the right-wing media, instead of pumping their people full of stuff about the deficit and about how this is a giveaway to illegal immigrants or whatever. I'm speaking specifically of the COVID relief bill. They're talking about Dr. Seuss. They're talking about Potato Head. I mean, they're 100% in on the culture war. There's nothing serious about it, and that really is an effect, I think, of the Donald Trump era, because he's not serious. He doesn't know what to say about this. He's clueless. He's a culture warrior in chief. And they have adopted that. And I don't think that it's completely because they're dumb or anything. I mean, Ron Johnson is, but I mean, others, I think they have adopted this as their strategy. They really believe that this is the way for them to win. And this is the way for them to keep their people charged up. And that all this stuff about, legislation, that boring legislation stuff, or talking about economics or anything like that, that's just a loser for them. Yeah. And it is. I mean, because democratic economics, while wildly imperfect, are way better than anything they ever had to offer.
Well, I mean, we were saying this before the show. This show replays at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. on the Peacock app. It also, obviously, you can see it on demand on YouTube. And there is no time. Essentially, you can access the show at one point or another throughout the day. I'm convinced there's no time that someone could be listening to the sound of my voice, that if you turn on Fox and wait 10 to 15 minutes, that they won't be talking about Dr. Seuss still today.
Well, that's the new random rush, Sam. Just tune into Fox News and see if Dr. Seuss is on.
But the amazing thing is, we are on the precipice of passing a $1.9 trillion bill. It does have some business, some business funding, but the bulk of this bill is states, cities, hospitals, people. There is $40 billion for rental and homeowner assistance payouts. There's $40 billion for childcare. They are expanding Medicare, Obamacare subsidies so that no one in the country should be paying more than 8.5% of their income. That's not, I mean, it's an inefficient system. But 8.5% is around what you would pay for taxes to do it. You won't get the same quality of care that you would have under a single payer system. And it should be a little bit less in terms of the income, as far as I'm concerned. But nevertheless, all of these things are happening that would have been considered fully radical by the Republican Party 5 or 6 years ago. And you turn on you look and see any Republican talking anywhere right now, and they are talking about those 6 books of Dr. Seuss. And that is it. Like when we played that Ron Johnson thing, as muddled and sort of completely nuts and pathetic as it was, I was like, well, he gets points for not doing like a Dr. Seuss rhyme to bring it back to that. And what's interesting to me, and I would say that, yes, Donald Trump, I see Donald Trump as the nail in the coffin of that, because let's be clear, They tried to repeal the ACA. What was it, 50 some odd times during the Obama years. The idea that they didn't have a plan to replace it after years of attempting to repeal it, like when they got into the position where they could actually repeal it, the reason why they didn't repeal it was because, and it was close, they didn't have a plan to replace it. They didn't have anything. And I think like they have been hollowing out even the bad ideas that they had. They've been hollowing out the sort of generation. I mean, the platform, like you say, is the perfect example of it. But and the platform, like, platforms are only so important, but what they do is they cause people to come up with ideas to put into them. And so like the dissolution of it is basically like saying like, there's no currency to that in this. And it's just this 2-track thing. I mean, you wrote a piece about CPAC this year, and it was in many respects demonstrably different. Like it's always been somewhat performative, but it's usually like performative about like they're pretending they have ideas. And this time it was just sort of just full on performative.
There was nothing there really about, any of this sort of, quasi-intellectual sort of ideology that they've been building for the last, 50 years, really. I mean, there was almost nothing of it. And whatever libertarian, which is the libertarian strain, particularly at CPAC, had always been very, very strong. Rand Paul and Ron Paul both used to win the straw poll every year. So that was a big part of it. It was a younger crowd. It was usually the sort of, strident young male libertarian types who were heavily present there. This year, there really wasn't any of that. The only aspect of libertarianism that we saw was people, screaming at freedom, Ted Cruz like a barking seal screaming freedom on the stage about wearing masks. And that's just own the lib stuff, right? I mean, that's not libertarianism. That's just trolling, other people.
And also just quickly in that straw poll, speaking of Ted Cruz, I mean, even his brand, like the libertarians would always win at CPAC, but even like Ted Cruz's brand of conservatism, of, whatever, I guess appealing to evangelicals in many ways, like that hasn't been winning out. It's all just if you're in Trump's orbit.
Absolutely. And of course, on the evangelical side, that's mostly in Trump's orbit now too. I mean, it just, none of that, it's all just this, as you say, performative. And the performance is this red meat culture war, just kind of, trolling and owning the libs. And this seems to be the only, I mean, maybe this is just a transitional period for them. It's something that they don't know what to do with themselves after Donald Trump. But honestly, that their ideological framework just really isn't relevant to anything. And even Donald Trump and even some of the, like Josh Hawley and some of the other sort of modern, Republican, comers in the party, or even Ron DeSantis. I think he's probably the best Trump 2.0 example that we can think of. They just are not on that ideological track that used to be. And of course, the Never Trumpers, they're kind of stuck out there. They kind of probably do have that ideology, but on a political level, and their sense of the threat to democracy that a sort of white nationalist, demagogic, party, which is what the Republicans are becoming. They don't want any part of that. So you're finding that there just isn't really much there. I guess what I'm saying is it's all froth. It's all froth. And however, I do want to point out that there is another side that is not present. But if you want to look at, what is happening, apparently, with what yesterday, the March 4th thing, where they thought that the militias and whatever were going to blow up the Capitol. I mean, obviously that didn't happen, but those groups have all gone underground. The more violent kind of, they're not about owning the libs. I mean, of course they love to own the libs, but that's not their purpose. They are truly now violent, anti-government, white nationalist movement within this bigger group of Dr. Seuss haters, or lovers. I guess it's Dr. Seuss lovers. So that group is still out there. And I think what we're going to see is the immigration issue is probably going to be the one that spurs them on to some if something happens to some form of violence. I mean, we saw that in El Paso. We saw it throughout the Trump years, the lone wolf, anti-immigrant white nationalists shooting something up. But that's where I think, we shouldn't take our eye off the ball and just assume that this, this group, this what the Republican Party and the Trump movement has become, the MAGA people, are just a bunch of clowns. They are clowns, but there's a whole layer underneath that still presents a tremendous threat, I think, to democracy.
And I want to just put a pin in that for one moment, because the all that said, that doesn't mean that they're not going to win more elections going forward. I mean, that is part of the problem. But let me circle back to that in a moment, because all I can think of is Josh Hawley coming up on that stage and going like, you guys are supposed to be canceled. We're all canceled. I mean, the aggrievement, this is the thing. The aggrievement has always been there. And certainly, you and I have been, having these conversations for over a decade now, almost two. And Josh Hawley, incidentally, just voted against the $15 minimum wage. He's a populist.
Mr. Populist.
And the aggrievement has always been there. I remember talking about the aggrievement in 2005, and my go-to joke was like, what do you get with a Republican without the aggrievement is just basically a 5 o'clock shadow. But it is the best way I can explain it. It's sort of like looking at like an actor like Al Pacino at this point. Maybe this is unfair. I don't want people to get upset. Or Robert De Niro, where as an actor, they always, when you start out, you're really focused and you get involved, and you have a couple of crutches that you go to, a couple of looks, a couple of turns of phrases, maybe the way that you have a lilt. That's your hook. And as you get older, you see with these actors is like all of the sort of like real hard work that they're doing, you back off a little bit and the lilt is there. And then, at one point they become almost like a representation of a characterization of themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's what's sort of happened with the Republican Party. Like everything has dropped out, even it wasn't necessarily substantive, but everything has dropped out, and they've just inflated those really low hanging crutches. And, it's going to be interesting to see if they can pivot. It's not that hard to pivot to the anti-immigration stuff. I mean, you're already starting to see them do this. Judge Janine is, yelling and screaming. They're saying in Texas that the COVID problem has nothing to do with us, having no mask mandates or opening up all the restaurants. Has to do with the Mexican immigrants. And so we're seeing that dynamic. But let's just pivot for a moment to this question of them winning elections. In the past couple of days, we have seen Georgia basically enact a new Jim Crow set of voting laws. We're seeing it in I don't know, half a dozen other states just in the past month. The first thing these Republicans do when they come in, if they've got a Republican governor, Republican legislature, is they start to inhibit voting rights. And we know that the Senate is anti-democratic in the sense that 40% of the nation can control more than 50% of the votes in the Senate because of the way that the Senate is configured and all of this gerrymandering. So we have this weird dynamic where on a policy level, the Democrats are able to sort of basically own the playing field because these guys are in the stands, dressed up as in some weird costume. Yeah. They're just they're the mascots. Like I'm wearing the banana suit and appealing to the people in the crowds, but they're not on the field. But from an electoral standpoint, they have a built-in advantage that Democrats need to overcome. And so the question becomes what do the Democrats do with this sort of sole position on the playing field? And it's almost like the one thing they got to do is just take the bolt cutters, get into the stadium, and that is the filibuster, right? And they've just introduced H.R. 1, which is a massive voting bill. And that seems to be the one that if they don't break the filibuster for this, it's not going to happen roll it up. Everybody, we'll see you at the next couple of reconciliation bills, but then we're done.
Oh, absolutely. That I wrote about this today for Salon. The HR1 is an existential bill for the Democrats. And, I don't know if they know this. I don't know. I assume that they do. They're not, complete idiots. What's happening around the country is a massive program to roll back voting rights on a level we have not seen in many, many decades. Now, some of this stems from the 2013 Supreme Court decision to kind of gut the Voting Rights Act to begin with. Hey, everything's fine now. We don't need this anymore. No more federal involvement. And so there's been this move, which is part of what spurred the HR1 in the first place. It was passed in the last Congress, but of course it sat on the desk of Mitch McConnell and never went anywhere in the Senate. But they reintroduced it. The House just passed it, and now the Senate is looking at it. And what it does, it is a massive voting rights bill, hugely, overdue. It tackles campaign finance, it tackles gerrymandering, it tackles, voting rights and various, other things that are fundamentally important in light, particularly now in light of what's going on in the wake of the 2020 election and Donald Trump's big lie about the stolen election. They are using that as an excuse to just go in and absolutely overturn every, voting law, voting expansion that they can in all these Republican places. Now, when you put that on top of the things you mentioned, the Senate already, the Democrats, we have a 50-50 Senate, but the Democrats represent 41 million more people than Republicans do. That doesn't seem like a democracy to me, but hey, I guess this is what we do. We know about the Electoral College. We already know that, the last two, we've had two in the last 20 years where someone who lost the popular vote actually won the Electoral College. It was just this close this time, even though Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes, that he might have been able to, eke out that win in the Electoral College again. So we know how undemocratic that is. We know that the gerrymandering, they've done studies over and over again. It almost always benefits Republicans, the way they cluster people into certain, into certain districts. They end up gaining seats and they have way more. Here's, this is the one that gets me. The Republicans have lost 6 out of the last 7 popular votes for president, and yet they have 6 Supreme Court justices on the court. I mean, that is just, there was no mandate for that. We all know the drama and the Sturm und Drang that we went through over the Supreme Court justices over the past 5 years. But we are in big, big trouble here. If we don't fix this voting situation, our electoral system, they are going to manipulate this to the extent that it's going to be impossible to fix it. What happens if they don't get this done? 2022, we may very well be looking at, it's a very thin margin. The Democrats might not win. This window is just very, very small to fix this problem. There's another bill coming down the pike, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is coming through, which also, it does looks at a lot of this stuff. Ronald Brownstein, the analyst for The Atlantic and CNN, smart guy, he wrote a long piece this week that just absolutely sent a chill down my spine. I mean, he went through all these details and he just said, basically said, this is an existential question, not just for the Democratic Party, but for the country. Because think about what we've just been talking about. We've got a bunch of clowns in hot dog suits sitting up in the stands. We've got militias running around. We have Donald Trump doing God knows what. If that party, that's the party we're talking about, this Dr. Seuss, militia, evangelical Donald Trump MAGA party, if they have power in this country for the next decade, which could happen due to gerrymandering and, all the rest of this, and they pass all these laws, I just don't know what'll happen to the country. The democracy is seriously in danger of being lost in a very, I hate to sound hysterical, but I kind of am, because I think it's that important. And here we have people dancing around the filibuster, Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, and maybe Dianne Feinstein. Well, I just don't really know. I'm sorry. this is it. I mean, I don't know if they can craft some filibuster exception for voting rights or find some way to do it. They have no choice. They have got to do that. There is no choice. If they don't, they're signing their own death warrant and the death warrant for our democracy in the process. This is ridiculous. And I don't even know why we have to talk about this. The end of my piece today was, if Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin want to end up being remembered as the Strom Thurmonds of their day, they will block this. They will refuse to cooperate. And I'm just fingers crossed that somebody's got the clout with those two, or anybody else who's in this. I mean, we don't know how many are wobbling on the filibuster, but it's got to be done. I mean, I'm for getting rid of it altogether. But in this particular bill, if this is all they can do is just get this bill through, eliminate the filibuster, and we'll deal with other issues as they come down the pike. Okay, whatever. But this one has to pass. It just has to, or we're dead.
Well, I mean, I'm curious too, because we're talking about how Republicans are their response to this COVID relief bill has been so weak and it hasn't been able to get any traction. I don't see how they're able to weaponize the elimination of the filibuster in any real way if Democrats choose to go forward with this. I just think it's a fear based on old playbooks and old media responses that just aren't good. Like we just talked about, it's not going to play in the same way that it traditionally would have with the Beltway media.
I agree with that. And your point is really true. The media is different now than it was. I mean, we still see both sidesing, and we still see, there's still plenty to complain about. But what you're talking about, this idea that they would naturally assume that something like the deficit or something like the filibuster, that these things were just sacrosanct, and there's no way that you could possibly suggest that those things were not vitally important to the American people. I remember back when they were talking about the Obamacare during that, I guess it was during the first year of the Obama administration, when they were saying, well, these people, these fabulously wealthy TV celebrities, who are, had their own programs, would come on and go, well, the American people are just going to have to take their medicine. It's time for them to understand that there's no free lunch. I mean, they would say this stuff, and I'd just be sitting there appalled going, who are you to be lecturing the American people about their medicine and what they have to take? And I'm not seeing that. I mean, to be honest, I'm just not. And I don't know whether or not this is some kind of, that they've learned something about economics in the intervening years, but I kind of doubt it. What has happened is that hold, that beltway hold on these sort of shibboleths, it's just Donald Trump came in and exploded that stuff. And some of it is kind of, falling back. There's still habits, the grooves that they sort of fit themselves into. But you're right. The idea that they would take the side of, and it's vitally important that they do, right? I mean, if the Beltway media, along with the right-wing media, doesn't back something like you cannot eliminate the filibuster, you're destroying the very foundation of our system if you do that. If they don't do that, then it's no longer considered conventional wisdom. And that's what usually gets these people over. And so you're absolutely right. It's an important aspect of this that, we shouldn't overlook. I mean, it's a new climate in the media for sure.
And just to end it, I'm not sure that the media has changed as much as the fact that there's just simply no Republican that they can turn to and say,
point.
like the old, some people say type of thing. Well, now they look back behind their shoulders and like, there's nobody there.
Yeah.
It's just like, John Thune making an argument that he only got paid $24 an hour when he was a kid. So why you need 15 today? Heather, Parton, Digby, always a pleasure. Folks can always check out your writing at Salon.com or at your Uber blog, Hullabaloo. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. So we got an IM from a listener during the show at 10:49 a.m. Central Time, who said they wanted to test the proposition that they could tune in to Fox. And sure enough, they watched Outnumbered, and they were talking about Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss, random Dr. Seuss.
Random Dr. Seuss could be. We could build a whole media empire around that. Folks, that's it for us for the first hour. Remember, we replay on the Choice channel on the Peacock app. You can see us at 5 and 10 p.m. daily. And we will be back Monday. We'll have a better sense of what this bill ended up being. And hopefully it'll be passed and signed by Joe Biden by the time we talk on Monday. Get that unemployment benefits out to people. They're going to need them very quickly. And this system is a little bit creaky. Doesn't get it to folks in time. We will see you then. And we will see you now. That's the way it works.
Hello.
Yep. I'll tell you what, we're going to take I know Andy Kindler's here. We're going to take a quick break because I just got to run and grab some paperwork before Mr. Kindler comes here.
Paperwork?
And then, what?
Paperwork?
Paperwork, yeah.
Okay.
I got to get some. Would you want to event? Why don't you, Emma, you welcome Andy Kindler to the show, and I'm going to go grab some paperwork. How's that?
I mean, I was going to use this opportunity to take my little break, but yeah, I'll hold down the fort.
I can play.
No, it's fine. I don't care.
Yeah, play. Just no. We're not going to go to the fun half. Let's just play some break music. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Andy, we're just going to put you on hold.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why would anybody Why would you put me on early?
Emma will be rejoining in a moment. In the meantime, it is always a pleasure to welcome to the program this guy who is often represented by this song.
With a Jew like Andy Kindler, you know you can't go wrong. His ancestors wrote the God Bless America song. A true Obama bot, and he believes Obama can never be wrong. Yeah, Andy Kindler.com. You made me laugh so hard, I had to write you your theme song, Andy Kindler.
Andy Kindler.
Still gets me. That makes me cry. It makes me tear up. Even though it's a very anti-Semitic song.
Is it an anti-Semitic song? Why is it?
No, I think it celebrates our people. I
love what you have done with your background. It's been a year almost. We're coming up almost exactly on a year of being quarantined,
right.
More or less. And after a year, what you have done with your whole Zoom background. Yep. I know you do a podcast. I'm sure you're doing live comedy shows online. And look at the amount of effort that you seem to have put in is really, really impressive.
Well, the thing that's sad about it is that's actually a virtual background. That's in lieu. That's one of my the ones I choose when I want to go crazy behind me.
Did you pay to have a graphic artist to create that?
Yeah, but should I have a painting or something? A painting of me? I could do that.
I mean, you should. If I'll tell you something, putting a painting of you behind you would be awesome.
Okay, I think I'll do that. But then you're acting as if my career's on the upswing. I'm thinking I'm wrapping it all up and I'm in a bunker now. You know what I'm saying? I'm hiding is what I'm doing.
Well,
Hey, by the way, I like when I say I'm going to be on the show, and then so many of the wonderful listeners to the show go, "Thanks for the warning. I won't." Now, come on, what are these people? Were they related to my father?
Maybe it's your father has a bunch of like sock puppets.
Little
I mean-
burners.
Yeah, but I mean, I say to my dad, "See you later." You go, "Not if I see you first." And now I got all the people from Majority Report going, "I'll be on soon." Well, we won't be there, jerky. Well,
Well,
call me jerky.
First off, I mean, that's not all the people. I mean, has to be somebody listening.
There
right
has
now.
to be somebody who doesn't call me a boomer. Hey, boomer. Obama
that.
apologist. Actually, no, I am making money as an Obama apologist. I tour about 3 months a year.
That's impressive. He's been out of office for so long that
And I gotta look. Cut him a slack is one of my uh-oh. Did it get dark? Am I dying?
What's going on?
I have a light. This is lit too, Sam.
Oh, it is? Do you have a
Yeah.
strobe light going off?
No. You know, I know that we like to joke about me because my microphone is wooden. Like my teeth. So far, I haven't been funny on the show, but I didn't prepare today. I didn't go look around. Dennis Miller's not still around.
I know it.
Who's
I
going to
know.
be our new guy that we go to? Is it Ben Shapiro's very funny? Are we going to be critiquing his act?
Limbaugh's dead. There's
What?
just not. Yeah. Did you not know that?
Oh, you know who's hilarious is Mark Levin. If he sounds like an evil Don Adams.
That's true.
And he
But
looks
you know-
he looks like an evil Rob Reiner.
The problem is that that's practically saying he's an evil Don Adams is practically a Dennis Miller bit.
Mr. Producer, cut 7. Go. I used to listen to that horrible show
I
just to keep myself awake, just to
So-
get over the 4 or 5.
Are you doing? I know that like some folks are just starting to do. Some comedians are
Thank you for including me.
yes, are starting to do outdoor shows.
Oh, yeah.
Spoke to our friend Sarah Silverman. She did an outdoor show. She said it was weird, but she was rusty. Have you done anything like that?
No, because first of all, I can't tell the difference between now and before the quarantine. I get the same amount of work. It seems to be. I never did well in clubs. And the thing is, I won't even
Same
go.
amount of people in the clubs when you show up.
Same, yeah, that's right. Always, as you say, at Andy Kindler show, I was on. Remember when I did my half a house tour? 30 people can't be wrong. 30. Andy Kindler's half a house tour. 12 people. Hey, every Wednesday it's ladies' night. Ladies, feel free to put your clothing on the empty seats next to you at the Andy Kindler show. I won't even go outdoor dining.
You were doing social distancing at your shows
Yes.
well before the.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I have a friend who has myasthenia gravis, and this is true, and he's in remission.
I
So
know
don't
what
listen.
That means.
Myasthenia gravis is a muscle disease, and I had never heard about it before. And it makes your your face is blank. You can't make expressions.
Oh, okay.
And it used to be very dangerous. And how isn't it amazing that what are the odds that half the people have been seeing my shows for the last 30 years suffer from myasthenia gravis? Maybe I've been killing.
Does that
but
go
they-
over well in
Oh,
the
it does
like,
nothing. Yeah, yeah.
neurology department at the hospital? Like,
Okay. Also, other symptoms of myasthenia gravis include craning your neck around involuntarily to see who might be laughing behind you, looking at your watch a lot, Googling nearest comedy club. Now, this is not, I don't make this stuff up, folks. As
yes,
you
you do. You do. That is actually, you literally do.
This is, and Emma, does it not, do I not scream casual Friday when you see me?
Yeah, again though, I mean the stark background, to be more casual, you've got to have like McDonald's wrappers behind you, etc.
I am not going to have a background until there's a $15 an hour minimum wage in this country, because I'm not spending is any of this working? I'm not spending $1 if I can't. If poor people don't have a good background.
All right.
I mean, that's nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's
good.
right.
No,
That's
that's
right.
good.
Well, I mean, but so are you doing like aren't you doing like any of those,
Oh yeah, I do some of those things, but I don't miss. Here's the thing, Sam. I don't wake up every day and go, oh, we got to get back out in the boards. I don't miss stand up. And also, the last thing I want to do is I released Hence the Humor, which was a very funny album according to me, and no longer will I ever be in the back of a club as someone brings up their germ-filled vinyl album that want for me to sell, to sign. I will never be near people. I will never get on a plane again. I will never be in the same room with people.
Come on. Why is that?
Look
Did you
at
get
me.
vaccinated yet?
No. And thank you. For the first time in my life, I'm not happy at being 64. Thank you, aging people. I got to sit around and watch people like my wife get vaccinated. I'm 64. Sam.
That is a hard situation. I have like everyone around me has gotten vaccinated. My ex went and got an extra vaccine at some of the distribution places at the end of the day.
Just to spite you.
I mean, I think there was probably a certain amount of that, but also
I'm making you cry. I make you cry with my material.
Yeah. My friend John Benjamin's the only person I have any real sort of like in-person contact that's not between a big plastic tarp.
That's me. I'm between the plastic.
Between two plastic tarps.
My sister was able to when you take someone over the age of 75 in Massachusetts, you can get a shot. And so now like it creates a certain amount of anxiety.
Well, I have the shingles vaccine. So
oh, you did?
Yeah.
I gotta get that too.
You do have to get that because you don't want to get shingles.
Yes.
Again.
A buddy of mine got it and he said you gotta get the vaccine.
Yeah.
I don't think I got to worry about that for a little while.
You got a while.
You're young, you kids.
No, I'm trying to. Sam always uses a lot of Emma's young jokes, so I'm trying to ramp up my he's old jokes, but it feels mean.
No, it's not mean. I got to get used to it.
Emma, you don't remember anything past the Daily Show.
Exactly.
No, I don't.
Older than the Trevor. You don't remember anything older than the Trevor Noah's Daily Show.
Well, I choose not to remember much of the Trevor Noah's material.
What? I can't.
Yeah.
Come on. Step aside, edgy people. We're back.
All right. Well, now, Andy, I don't know.
You can't get rid of me this quick. That's not
I'm not getting rid of you.
That's not a casual fun
No,
Friday.
I've been trying to sort of build up to this. We have to deal with an elephant in the room.
And not my career?
No.
Are you talking about Jay?
Yes.
No, this is not a true story, right?
It is a true story.
No, it's not a true story.
It is a true story. It is a true story.
I could almost cry if you're really telling me it's true.
I am telling you the truth. It is.
He's doing a sketch. He's doing a sketch for Bob's Burgers.
I honestly like. All right, people don't know what we're talking about, but you and I know what we're talking about. But
I
he's
know.
been
Yes.
trending on Twitter, so I mean it's public. So we get.
I can't even understand it. I've been in the room with him for many, many times. He never brought up. Hey, Andy, by the way, did you get my email about? I sent
So
you
let me
about
just
Lyndon
set the
LaRouche.
Let me set the table here.
Okay.
For those people who don't know, Andy Kindler is the second best voice artist on this Zoom call right now.
Who's the first? Who's the Emma? Emma, you're on Bob's Burgers, Emma?
No, I'm
Andy Kindler.
I'm Family Guy.
No, I'm.
Family Guy. Hey, where'd that guy come up with his ideas? Except every other cartoon. All right, sorry.
So Andy and I.
Okay, well, I'm not sorry. We won't get into the Family Guy.
That's my boss you're talking about.
I pulled the mic out of my head. I'm sorry.
So
I pulled
Andy
the
and
mic
I,
out of my ear.
Andy, you and I have known each other for 25 years.
Since when was pilot season and all that stuff? What year?
That Who's the Caboose was 96. So it's been
Right.
probably 25, 25,
Yeah.
26 years. And when we started out, or when I started out, I mean, you had been in the business for about 30, 40 years.
I'm so old. It really is. I'm the oldest person. I don't know. Even Lewis Black called me and said that he's somehow younger than me.
No, he's not.
No, he's not.
But that scene in LA in like 94, 95, there was a lot of, some people from Boston had come, people from all over the country, obviously out in LA. And there was the alternative comedy scene. And that's, I sort of met you through some of those people, probably from Sarah Silverman or something. And through the years, we've worked on some things together, not many,
Yes.
but a little bit. We are now both on Bob's Burgers. You have a bigger role.
I don't like. That's not what it's about. It's not about
it's
how well my pension's doing.
no. It's you have a bigger role, at least in terms of time, but I'm not sure in terms of importance of the show. But nonetheless, you play Mort.
We'll be back with more backhanded compliments after these messages.
You play Mort.
Mort the Mortician.
Mort the Mortician. I play Hugo, amongst many, many other characters.
I only play one character. I can do I could do a Jew, and I can do an older Jew. That's all I do.
I have more or less. That's my range too. It's just I was able, like if I do this, I can do one.
I know, but you look Italian. You could pass as Italian.
Well, but it's animated
again.
It's animated.
No, but I mean, in real life, you could hide as Italian. There's
well,
no way that I'll convince people.
I don't know about that, but that's not the point. So,
that is the point, right?
Last night, this started going around in some of our circle of friends, some of the, and because one of the, sort of like we're friends with this whole group of a generation of comedians who are, more or less between our ages, maybe a little bit younger than us too.
Mr. Show was part of the Mr. Show. I was in the audience of Mr. Show.
I was too.
watching the person that we're talking about.
Right. And so, and in Mr. Show, obviously Bob Odenkirk, David Cross, David and I had worked together in Boston before Mr. Show. And so I was out there, and John Ennis was in Mr. Show. And there was a couple other people who were like Paul Tompkins was sort of around. I don't know if he was in Mr. Show.
He actually emceed some of the, he actually emceed something. It was hilarious. And he was in it too.
Let's play a clip. We have Sarah would sometimes do Mr. Show, and who else? There was a couple other people, like Tom Kenny. I mean, people would drop in sort of.
Mary Lynn Rice
Cup, and
Jill Talley, Tom Kenny.
Oh, exactly.
That's right. Tom Kenny and Jill Talley.
All right, play a little clip of Mr. Show.
I was never in Mr. Show. Sorry.
I was not.
Stenson's Mailster costs a little more, but saves a lot of time.
That's David Cross's voice.
If you've never seen the show, you should check it out. It's a very funny show.
Are you a two-jar slave? Well, thanks to Vonnie's, you don't have to take it anymore. Now, there's new Vonnie's Mustard Ale.
Look at that guy carefully. Look at that guy carefully.
Let's get the hell out of here.
Mustard Mayonnaise combines the spicy goodness of mustard with the creamy richness of mayonnaise.
Okay, there you go. Very funny show. And we would go see it live, go live. This is obviously they would do some, but at one point it was, it was also live. And so that guy who was just shooting people with the machine gun is Jay Johnstone. He also plays a role in home movies, in Bob's Burgers.
Yeah. He's Jimmy Pesto.
Jimmy Pesto, who is a rival restaurant owner to Bob.
He's very fun. He's very, very funny.
Very funny guy. And so this picture goes around on Twitter last night. This tweet.
Oh
The FBI is still seeking information on people who took part in the violence at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. If you know this individual, visit tips.fbi.gov. Refer to photo 247 in your tip.
I just know I'm going to be punked on this later or something.
No, I mean, he's trending. Isn't he? Is he still trending?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he is. Oh, I don't know. But
Brendan, check out, see if he's trending. It's Jay. And apparently he fell in with, like, I think Proud Boys or Proud Boy adjacent stuff. And nobody
could have ever in a million years would have thought this was true.
I mean, I don't have any particular insights into this. Jimmy Pesto is trending. I mean,
Buckingham Nicks was involved in something. See how funny I am. Buckingham Palace. All of a sudden I say Buckingham Nicks. It's a group that existed before Fleetwood Mac. Good night, everybody, please.
I mean, it's bizarre. It's just absolutely bizarre. And the amazing thing is, like, if I was to ever imagine.
Oh, I know him from the Sarah Silverman program. I was trying to think. That's how I know him.
Yep, he's in Sarah's show.
Oh, hell, I've known him as long as I've known. He did a show with Paul F. Tompkins in the 90s that was brilliant.
Yep, they were a comedy duo during that time.
Yeah,
and I think they both were writers on Mr. Show, and if you imagine Bob and Dave getting together to do a Mr. Show reunion, it is so easy for me to imagine them doing a sketch where one of their fellow performers had been part of storming the Capitol.
That's right. I mean, Ronnie one.
Totally. Totally.
Well, he's somebody who I just assume that everybody that I am friends with, we have the same politics. I mean, the certain baseline of politics. I've never talked about politics with him. I just can't. I just cannot imagine this on any level at all. How this would have happened. Like I say, outside of a sketch, it's just shocking to me.
I think everybody. I mean, I know everybody associated with the Bob's Burgers was in complete shock from this.
Now, not everybody called up like Sam and inquired as to who was going to play the Jimmy Pesto role. That was just something that Sam did, just to say he just wants to make sure everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's not the solution. Here is the solution that I came up with.
Bob, I just shut down Jimmy Pesto's. Yes, he had multiple violations. Rat feces, mouse feces, cat feces, dog feces.
There you go. And not CC's.
The sad thing is that this has been on Sam's answering machine since 1997.
No, I have one for every character.
Hi, I'm Andy Kindler. You may know me as Mort the Mortician on Bob's Burgers. I'm not here right now.
I came up with like Hugo excuses as to why every character is off, just as a way to sort of write my character in to explain why. So
you do a lot, and this is true. You send a lot of edible gift baskets over there, don't you?
That's right, of course. Yeah, no, Bob, I'm sorry, but I've shut down Mort the Mortician's place.
You notice how Sam got a little stiff there? See? Just you know what I'm saying? I'm just joking. I don't know.
No, I saw it.
There was no
But it's
joke.
bizarre, isn't it? I mean, this is really strange. I think like it's more painful for, I mean, I haven't talked to him in years and years. I mean, I hadn't done scenes with him and certainly hadn't seen him in, cause you guys do it in LA. We do it in New York.
Well, you kind of do it over there, but this is really the center of of show business.
Well, yeah, no, I understand that, but it's just, it's so bizarre. It's so
no,
bizarre.
this is really terrible because I can't imagine, I spent 4 years going, I can't imagine, how he could have gotten one vote, how anybody would have, the birther in it. So I couldn't imagine anybody I know ending up there. That's
the thing. It's one thing to be a Trump supporter, right? I mean, you had millions of people who voted for Donald Trump.
But nobody I know, not one person I know. I have one person and I don't have persons in my family. I was watching something on people do, I guess a lot of people do have a person in their family who's, but I'm very Jewish and we don't allow conservative people around. Unless it's Netanyahu.
It's another to think like I'm going to to buy into the notion. I mean, this is the thing that I'm really curious about. Does Jay believe that the election was stolen?
Well, here's the thing. You would never, I'm the kind of person who gets on everyone's nerves because I really do get, and I'm less this way than I used to be. I used to argue with everybody until I got into therapy and realized that the person I'm arguing with, Andy, that person you're arguing is probably not your father. Your father passed away a few years ago,
Right.
and there's no reason for you to recreate this argument with him online. But I mean, this just absolutely. So he's a guy who's always been so sweet.
Yes.
And you just never. It's not like he's, like someone's hiding there, and all of a sudden you found out they were like Perot supporters. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, I'm just speculating, but like a lot of it's just you can get down a conspiracy wormhole sometimes. I mean, maybe
I
that's
know
what
you
it
can.
is. Maybe that's what it is.
Well,
or I guess I am speculating, but I meant.
Well, I mean, I mean, that is the thing. I mean, it's very possible, but it's also like, what are the pressures on him to react to that conspiracy? I mean, the idea that like he's out and I mean, I find it fascinating.
Maybe he
And-
wanted to meet the shaman guy because that guy's pretty good. That shaman guy.
he's
I mean, I'm
not
not a big
really
fan.
a shaman.
I'm not a big fan of people who take concepts from cultures and co-opt them
appropriate
for
them, yeah.
horrible. But in his case, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
When
You know,
he was
you give him an
screaming
exception.
up there when he just kept screaming. Now
Did
he.
you ever have any indication that Jay like was involved? I mean, because this is not like I could see like, you're a Trump supporter, maybe you're not going to talk about it, but you're this adamant that you are going to storm the Capitol. And we don't know, to be fair, like, look, there's a picture of him. We don't know if he was, we just know the FBI is looking for him. They could be looking for 1,000 people.
The last thing you'll ever hear. I would jump off a building. I would jump off. Forget about the time when 8 people got my phone number. I would jump off a building if the FBI was looking for me.
I mean,
because I was involved in the MK Ultra stuff.
Don't say that because the FBI, that's what the FBI would want.
Let me finish.
people to
Let
think.
me finish. That's exactly. If I see him, I will report him immediately.
No, but I mean, if you're off a building, that could have been the FBI's doing.
That's true. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about my MK Ultra days.
I just am. I'm really. I honestly can't come up with. Well,
Tim Heidecker, right?
Ugh. Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had a problem with him.
Oh my God. Do you see the offensive stuff he puts out about me? Pull
Are
up
you
what he
serious?
put up today. Yeah. Look at this.
No,
No,
this is a
he's-
joke now. Are you a punk? Are you guys punking me?
One sec.
No, Tim Heidecker is just completely out of control.
See, I thought he was always he was kidding. So when he said, yeah, I think it's Jay, I thought his whole thing was Tim and Eric were jokesters.
I mean, do you find this funny? Put it. Look at what
I found it anti-Semitic. I don't
Look
know.
at what he's putting around right now about me. Look at that. He put
Something
put
about
this out.
that. Yeah.
Cedars.
Oh, he's fucking around. You guys are fucking
No,
around.
that is like Stan Cedar. I don't know.
Is this
brother.
whole thing a prank now where I'm going to come around and now Jay Johnston's going to hop out from behind the curtain? I'm the last person in America who actually thinks that was Jay Johnston, I bet.
I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know what Tim Heidecker's up to. I have no idea what that guy, but
no, he said that he confirmed that he was there. He said, but I thought he was kidding around.
I don't think so. No.
Oh. Well,
so strange.
Talk about Andy Kaufman. It's like, remember Andy Kaufman when he did a lot of right-wing bits?
Yes.
That's the end.
Do you think that's what Jay was doing? I don't think so.
No,
I feel
don't.
like you would have put that on YouTube as soon as you get back. I mean, that's the thing is that like, I was like, could he try and make the argument that he was just there doing a bit, but like, why didn't he put out a video?
Yeah. But how do you arrive? It's like, you can't like, okay, later in life, I started listening to some of the Nazi speeches and I didn't agree with all of it. But I mean, how do you go that direction? I mean, I understand Dennis Miller, who was always a jerk and a mean guy, but that's why I just think I'm being punked, or we're all being punked.
I don't have a sense of who knew, and I haven't had a chance really talk to anybody, that in the LA circle of his friends. Nobody in New York who he worked with him, was even would have these type of incidental, but I'm curious if people had a sense of how much of a sort of double life, because you don't just show up there in December, I was contemplating voting for Biden. And then I saw what happened in Georgia, and I'm like, this is stolen and somebody has to do something about it. And I just got on a plane. It was I just got wrapped up in the moment. He had to have been in an ongoing sort of drama or relationship with this. And,
but also never talked about it. I never heard anything political from him ever.
No, I mean, that's the thing. He must have been living basically almost like a, if not a secret life. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know him enough to know. When I would go in, people knew that I worked in talking about politics professionally.
But everybody had the same politics at that show. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a secret, anarcho, what do they call? They try to call I like this show called I Don't Speak German. If you ever get a chance to hear it, it's a podcast where they show you how everybody on the right wing are not, how it gets back to Nazis all the time. Right?
I don't know if that's healthy for you to listen to.
Oh, no, more Nazis. I've watched Hitler in color. My favorite one is still out there, folks. It's called Hi Hitler. Hi Hitler is an actual documentary about Hitler and his drug problems. We need a catchy title to get people to watch.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Because he took all those drugs. Hi Hitler. Do you need I'm telling you, Hitler's numbers are down, and they need to find ways that would make it more. But
what people don't know about Hitler is that he was a pretty fun hang when he got stoned.
Look, Hitler, at least he served, right? He was in the armed forces. Hitler was injured in World War I. So, when you compare him to Trump, I mean, at least Hitler walked the walk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he really, yeah. Did you know there was a British sitcom, I think this is probably 20 years old now, called Heil Honey, I'm Home. And it was, maybe it was 25 years ago. And it was Hitler was living in Eva Braun. Were living in a flat, it was sort of based on I Love Lucy, and it was Hitler and Eva Braun were living, and they had neighbors who were always this is during, ostensibly during World War II or something.
Sounds like the
that.
Producers.
Yeah, it was.
It's Goebbels lives next door. Or
no, because it was in Britain. So they were just there. They were the kooky couple who was what are these guys doing?
I know. I just wonder what the Fred and Ethel dynamic.
The Fred and Ethel were British, and so
so a culture clash.
There was a little bit of culture clash, and that was the whole thing with Desi Arnaz was the spicy Cuban who had moved in next door,
right,
and so. I can't remember. It wasn't on for very long, oddly. But I mean, that's, I do remember that show. I mean, it's, I don't know. I guess I'm still in a sort of a slight state of shock.
About
Jay.
Right. I know. I was pretending that I didn't know what it was. I'm still upset about David Mamet. I mean, not that I still can't believe that. I mean, not that I knew what his politics were either, but it's just when he went right wing, I just was
oh, I think he was always a very odd guy. In fact, I had years ago in Boston, again, in late 90s, I had friends who.
He was on Dr. Katz, by the way.
Yeah, he was in that. He knew some people. He was adjacent. He was in Cambridge. I mean, he knew.
And he knew Jonathan Katz.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
And I happened to be having dinner with some family that he was family friends with, and they were over there, and I was listening to this guy talk, and I'm like, oh my God.
This is way before that.
This is in the mid 90s. And I'm like, he's a lunatic. I know he wasn't. I mean, he was a lunatic.
I like State and Maine though.
I mean, there's he had some decent work.
But I know, but it's just like he's so. I always get surprised. It's like Ron Silver. Remember Ron?
I'm not surprised about that. I used to debate Ron Silver on I would debate. I had a big argument with Ron Silver on at the GOP convention on Scarborough country about the invasion of Iraq.
Oh no, Scarborough country! Wow. About what was the argument?
About Iraq.
And he'd be like a moderate. He'd be like a moderate. He wouldn't even get on Fox News today.
No.
He'd be too reasonable. He'd be more. He'd be like he'd have to replace the. They still have quote liberals on there.
Like Alan Combs. Well, I mean,
he's dead.
Glenn Greenwald.
Juan.
Nomi's on today.
Oh, is she on Fox today?
Well, she texted me about whether like what Dr. Seuss puns she should pull out.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I got sad about that. You know what? When you go back into history and you read, the best you can find is someone who goes, I wasn't anti-Semitic, but I did find the Jews annoying. I mean, these people, there's so much just baseline anti-Semitism. What happened? What did we do? Is it because we were in the money business? What was it? Is it my looks? Is it the horns?
I'm
what
not
is
convinced
it,
that these segments don't spur a lot of it.
What? Because we're both Jewish or something, or
I mean, just the way that we act.
We're very Jewish. They say cast right Yiddish, cast British. That's why I think you had a better chance because you're a handsome Jew. I've always said that.
I read a little bit not Jewish.
Number one.
Is that why you hired me, Sam? Just kind of balance it out?
Yeah.
You don't know what went on previous to you coming here. The Ava Braun years. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to cause trouble.
But Andy, so what do you have planned?
Oh, come on.
Spiral?
Are you guys? Can you say it more? Can you say it more sarcastic? I have a great podcast. It's called Thought Spiral. 2 Jews, 2 hours, 2 microphones.
Lots of neuroses.
No guests. There's no guests. It's all me talking about my therapy, talking about how people don't like me.
Are you doing your therapy over Zoom?
Yes, and I love it so much.
It's a lot easier than going to I don't really want to go back, to be honest with you.
At first, I was very sad about it because I didn't feel like, but once I went on the Zoom, I could see what she's thinking because I'm always like, what did I do now? What did I do now?
And I like you're like closer to her, so I can tell when she zones out too, which I like.
I'm twice a week. I'm the oldest Jew to enter therapy at the age of 59. I got into therapy.
Wow.
It's been the greatest
Good for you.
thing of my whole life because I almost disappeared in the hell of social media. I would be like arguing with people. I'd be like, why does Razor Blade and Apple 666 have a problem with my act? You're arguing with people and I didn't realize I was out of control. If you have OCD and like I have it, Twitter's the worst because you keep checking. You can keep checking what people are saying about you.
Interesting. Yeah, no, you were pretty
I was
all in.
And I hated Ricky Gervais. Oh, yeah. Hated Ricky Gervais.
Now, have you guys come together, you and Ricky Gervais, and buried the hatchet?
I think I was right about the New Atheists. You said they were great. I'm just kidding. The New Atheists. The New Atheists were such Islamophobes, and they started it.
True.
And I was what was I called what is it called when you're rejected or you're a outcast? Because I was defending Islam. Can you believe it? That people would I have to argue with somebody about the right to someone to have to follow whatever religion they want to do. Imagine if I was articulate, Sam.
That would have been dangerous.
Yes. I can't promise soda in the water fountains, but if you elect me as vice president of our general organization, I can promise something.
All right. Andy Kindler.
All I'm thinking, I can't think about anything but Jay, and I'm gonna cry.
That was distracting. I had to bring it up, but I knew that it would sort of be a segment killer.
Who's that guy who used to go on? Remember when Chris Matthews had those horrible guests, and he always had horrible guests, but he had like an ex Cadell, Patrick Cadell. Yeah. When they would bring on these people. This guy's a Democrat, and okay.
Pat Cadell was a big Fox News guy. Yep.
Yeah, and
Former
they also had
pollster,
the
I
guy
think, for Jimmy Carter.
And they had the triangulation guy too, right? Was it Richard Morris that they had?
Oh, Dick Morris. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. He enjoyed like he would employ sex workers, but then like have them on the phone. There was something that, like he wanted to show them. I think he wanted to impress them.
Yes.
That he was
That was
talking to the
different.
president.
Yeah.
But all right, Andy, always a pleasure. We will talk more about this, but you should know that Wildcard 26 tells us Hitler won the Iron Cross second class for wounds suffered as a message runner. So there he goes. He was mustard gassed. And so
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm just saying Hitler was mustard gas. I'm just trying to build a little sympathy for him as opposed to
You never know the journey people are on.
Exactly.
So don't be judgmental.
Right. Don't judge.
Yeah,
Right.
don't judge. You got to wait until the end to find out.
I mean, you ever think about walking a mile in his big boots? Did you ever think of that?
Big.
No, the blisters. Andy,
I love
always
you
a
guys.
pleasure.
Thank you,
We'll do it
Emma.
again.
Thank
Be
you.
great to see you.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, be good.
All right, folks, going to head into the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number. We will see you there. You can become a member of the show by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you get the free show free of commercials, and you support the show. And you also get extra content in the fun half. It is your support that makes this show possible.
Content.
Your support makes this show possible, folks. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget AM Quickie. Find it at amquickie.com and justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Don't forget, check out Know Me Show today. It is youtube.com/The Nomiki Show or twitch.tv/the_Nomiki_show. Again, people could just see my brain working there.
You got two different pronunciations in.
I did.
I still don't know what it is.
Shoot. Don't forget, check out the Antifada, patreon.com/the Antifada. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian universe?
Last night on Left Reckoning, we had Asen Gonzalez of Machete y Mate on to talk about the Ecuador elections, Puerto Rican statehood versus independence, and also the Jackson, Mississippi water issue. So check that out. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning and Left Reckoning on YouTube and podcast players.
See you in the fun half.
And for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt. Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck 'em. Almost has what? Almost says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black Africans. And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black.
You see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em, fuck 'em, fuck 'em, fuck 'em, fuck 'em, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. My birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy, 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 pussy.
We are back. Fun half. Emma, Matt, Brendan. Here is Bernie Sanders.
Wait, hold on. I'm so sorry.
Did you have something to eat?
I was eating cashews and I tried to hide it.
You could have like tried to swallow it during the time that Bernie Sanders was talking, but
I
never.
I didn't want you to clip it and then me be like,
We can have cashews or we can have issues.
There you go. It's either cashews or issues.
I'm sorry.
Today, there a series of amendments were voted on for the $15 minimum wage. Here's Bernie Sanders. Believe this is when he introduced the amendment for the $15 minimum wage, calling out the parliamentarian and saying what is like sort of demonstrably true.
Because of an unfortunate and, in my view, misguided decision by the parliamentarian, this reconciliation bill does not include an increase in the minimum wage to $15 an hour. In my view, it should have. And I think the parliamentarian was dead wrong. But more importantly, it is an absurd process that we allow an unelected staffer, somebody who works for the Senate, not elected by anybody, to make a decision as to whether 30 million Americans get a pay raise or not. Now, I don't care how the parliamentarian rules, no parliamentarian should have that power. If people here want to vote against raising the minimum wage, you have that right. You want to vote for it, and I hope you do, you have that right. But we should not shuffle off that responsibility to an unelected staffer. That's wrong.
Okay, and so Bernie Sanders takes to the floor. He talks about how ridiculous it is that the parliamentarian killed it. We all know that the parliamentarian can be overruled. It has happened in the past. The parliamentarian just gives an advisory opinion. Here is Sanders in that same Senate floor speech challenging senators to live on starvation wages.
And the National Women's Law Center. So once again, this is legislation that will increase wages for 30 million American workers. And if you ask me what the great economic crisis in our country is today, it's not just high unemployment. It's not just income and wealth inequality. It is that half of our people today and before the pandemic were living paycheck to paycheck. Their wages were so low that if they had a problem with their car or their kid got sick, suddenly they were in financial crisis. And in the richest country in the history of the world, half of our people should not be facing economic desperation when their car breaks down. And the reason for that is significantly that many millions of workers are earning starvation wages, and I underline that, starvation wages in this country. I'd love to hear anybody get up here and tell me that they could live on $7.25 an hour. They could live on $8 an hour. They could live on $9 an hour. You can't. And I've been all over this country, and I have talked to workers who are making 10, 11 bucks an hour with tears streaming down their cheeks, telling me what it's like to work for starvation wages and try to raise your kids. So the time is long overdue. Last time this Congress passed an increase in the minimum wage was in the year 2007. 2007. It is time to raise the minimum wage. It is time to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of 15 bucks an hour.
Here are
Powerful.
the
Powerful. Yeah.
And here are the Democratic senators who voted no on the minimum wage amendment. John Tester from Montana, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire, Angus King, not technically a Democrat, but caucuses with the Democrats from Maine, Kristen Sinema from Arizona, Tom Carper from Delaware, Chris Coons from Delaware, and Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire.
I have to say something about that, right? Just really quick.
Please.
This is why I was fairly ambivalent about this strategy by Bernie Sanders. So let me just say, everything he says there is powerful, morally correct, exactly why we need a $15 minimum wage at least yesterday, more than yesterday, right? Years ago. Those senators that voted against this, not all of them would oppose the $15 minimum wage had it been kept in the bill. They're doing this in order to provide cover for Joe Biden's cowardice and unwillingness for him and Kamala Harris. Really, it would be Kamala Harris's job, but she would get that directive from the White House to overrule the parliamentarian. They're making it artificially seem like there were more no votes against the stimulus package that included a $15 minimum wage than there are. Chris Coons is Biden's little minion. He does whatever he wants. And I think Carper, alongside him, a lot of these senators are running interference for Biden and cover for Biden. And so I didn't agree with taking this out and taking this tactic, really, forcing the vote in this area, because it makes the minimum wage increase seem more insurmountable than it actually is.
Yeah.
And it allows there to be an excuse going forward. So while Bernie obviously is correct in terms of just the policy and what needs to be done, I don't agree with the strategy.
I couldn't agree more. The only thing I would add to that is it's also cover for each other. Like, you know, it's
cover for Sinema and Manchin.
Yes.
Specifically.
And it is these 8 trying to forge a caucus and operating as a caucus. They are going to be looking in the future to attempt to make we're going to hear so much about this. They may call it the Gang of 8. Now they know they need to get to 10. So they're going to try and call it. Now they could call it the Gang of 18. Usually you like to have as many Democrats as Republicans. And the bottom line is this is to basically protect each other as well, to protect Manchin and Sinema. Now, maybe down the road, this pays some dividends. I doubt it. But yes, the strategy, the amendment strategy was never going to win. You could have left it in there and focused the attention on where it should be focused. You must exact some type of political cost in this scenario. It wouldn't have been big, but it would have, if you had left it in the bill, tried to force, that would have been a long shot as well. But to do this was just basically performative. And all it does is, you're right, it makes the minimum wage look less doable. So when people say, I'm holding Kamala Harris to account for not overruling the parliamentarian, somebody's going to turn to you and go like, it lost. It couldn't even get 42 Democratic votes.
Exactly. But in
votes.
the House, it passed because this is a core policy, of the progressive priorities, this is by far the most doable. And the reason it passed in the House was because, like, it is that doable. It's just that Biden didn't want to overrule the parliamentarian. Sinema and Manchin at least wanted to posture as such, and now they have more senatorial human shields in order to back up their case.
Put up Carper's tweet.
Yeah, Tom Carper has said that he supports a $15 minimum wage. He just voted against this amendment. So this is back in 2018. A tweet by Carper there. It's the second in that thread, I believe.
And now he's going to say, I voted against it because it shouldn't have been, from a procedural standpoint, we knew that it didn't belong in that bill. And this is in 2018.
Yes. So the point is that
that's 3 years ago, folks.
So the argument on the other side is, okay, now we know who the primary, right? But we don't necessarily. Okay, all of these conservative Democrats should have healthy primary challenges, I believe. That's something I support 100%. And if we can get a more progressive candidate to defeat them, like, amazing. But I don't really think this has that much of an effect on it because of exactly what we're seeing here. Mostly who this protects is the White House and Sinema and Manchin, the three real villains in this situation.
Yes.
So now it deflects blame and scatters it across other Democrats. And now they're like, oh, we curried favor with the White House and maybe we'll get something on the back end by doing this. I think it muddies the waters and it doesn't necessarily make things easier to pass the minimum wage, which is, just because I don't support forcing the vote in this and this specific tactic doesn't mean
make sense in this context. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And we have a good example of why now. Like, are people really like, oh my God, I had no idea about Chris Coons. I had no idea. I mean, and that's why it's not a coincidence that you're seeing, half of those voters, half of those senators are the same delegation, from their states. Like, we're in this together. I got your back. You got my back. If 8 of us do it, then there's no,
both the senators from the president's home state.
Exactly. Yep. Well, that's
and New Hampshire. So it just doesn't work. But that's what it is.
Again, though, Bernie, obviously warrior for the people.
It's a strategy that was, it was.
I found it inauthentic. I find it inauthentic.
Without a doubt. Here is, just to remind you, what we would not get. And, a $1.9 trillion relief bill. There's going to be a lot of people. I think there is a very strong argument that if you are someone who believes that material benefit is going to help the Democrats electorally, there's going to be a bunch of families out there. Now, 86% of families in this country who have 4 members are going to get a check for $5,600. They are also, that same family, assuming 2 kids, they're going to get another $3,000 or $3,600, depending on the age of the kid, spread out over the course of the year in money. That's serious cash. That is, over 10% of your income there. If you're making $75,000 or, so that's some real money. There was a failure to deal with anything sort of structural. You have a must-pass bill that the Democrats have, and there's a failure to put that in there. And, we didn't get into this with Digby, and I meant to. I don't know. Like, if I had to take that vote in the House, because it's going back to the House, and there's a good argument as to why maybe House progressives should vote against the bill, send it back into conference, and try and get a better, whether it's $15 minimum wage, whether it's a $2,000, try and get more, try and win, get a win to show some power, both for the sake of showing power and to get some material benefit. And I asked Digby about this. We had recorded something for Ring of Fire, and I screwed up the tape. And both of us were like, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision, because A, it is not, it's not a parity dynamic. You're not forcing Joe Manchin to vote against it in this situation, right? You're the one who's voting against it. And you're the one who's holding up the COVID relief bill. You're the one who's holding up $5,600 checks to everybody and to unemployed people, on top of which they would get that $1,400 and whatever kids they have. They're also looking at a $300 benefit on their in terms of their unemployment and tax relief, probably on their unemployment benefits. Yesterday, Emma, I read out, helpfully, a listener sent in a link to the IRS. Even if your 2020 earnings were down and your 2019 earnings were up, even if you don't file before, if you file afterwards, you will get the benefit. They will give you the benefit. So it's just a question of timing as to when you get it. So there's a lot of good stuff in this for people. COBRA extensions, horrible mechanism to do it, but on the receiving end, you still get health insurance. I mean, this is the situation. It's like, do you deprive, and the AOC, if you're coming from one of the hardest hit COVID, counties or districts in the country, and one of the, where people are struggling more than many other places in the country, do you hold up this bill with the hopes of getting something better? And I think there's a decent argument on either side, to be honest with you. I'm glad I wouldn't have to make that decision, because just, put aside your own personal political calculations. Do you want to risk? What if you do it and a worse bill comes out? What if you do it and they say, like, yeah, we'll go back to conference. We're going to cut another $100 out of the unemployment benefit. And now,
and it's also just the deadline is
the cliff is in the 14th. You got
the cliff
9
is
days.
the 14th. You've got to sign it, and then also give time for the mechanisms to send out these benefits.
There's definitely people who are going to go without their benefits for a period of time. There's definitely some, and so it's I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. Let's put it that way. But I could definitely see, like, you know what, this could be one of the few opportunities you have to exert this power, test out the theory, I guess. But I don't know if I want to be doing that kind of experiment. The difficulty is, and this is always the dilemma for Democrats, and it's the dilemma for progressives, depending, when they're dealing with like corporate Democrats. It's, do I risk, like, their investment, in this instance, the progressives in the House, their investment in getting this money to people is greater than it is for Joe Manchin, because Joe Manchin's political fortunes are tied up in denying people stuff. And not coincidentally, he probably doesn't care as much. I mean, very hard to make the argument that an AOC doesn't care, right? You can say, like, they don't know how to wield power if you want, but very hard to find another member of Congress who has done more for their district or for people, just like by leveraging their internet fame. And and so, I mean, that is the dilemma, that they're more invested in getting those people that money. And
can I just, Sam, I'm going to give this to you cold. Brendan, I sent it in the chat. This is a clip of Kyrsten Sinema voting no on the minimum wage. She brought a chocolate cake in to work today, apparently. Very let them eat cake vibes. Do you have this, Brendan? This is a GIF of her. Do you see that?
Oh my God. She gave the thumbs down.
She gave the thumbs down, like little hip jolt. As if she was doing the bend and snap or something from Legally Blonde.
Yeah, she's is that
taunting
really
people.
video of her doing that though? Is that really video of her doing?
Yes.
Oh my God. I mean, this is her. I'm a maverick. It's so obvious, right? I mean, it is, she's trying to be John McCain.
Yeah,
I know, but
we gotta do something about Arizona until we figure out what the hell's going on over there with their senators.
I mean, she's like putting on a show as she votes against the minimum wage.
Yep.
I don't even like, wow, girl boss.
Well, I mean,
Yes,
look,
queen.
Here's the point. That if I'm one of these senators, I'm pissed that I'm having to vote against it as an amendment. And I look, and I'm not, make it clear here. I'm not expressing sympathy, but we knew this wasn't going to pass. Bernie knew it wasn't going to pass. What is the value in showing that 8 senators vote against it? I mean, these are all senators. I think we've had at least 1 or 2 of these senators we've already had legitimate challenges to in the past. But what is the value of making Sinema and Manchin take a vote against the minimum wage? Put aside self-satisfaction. And from their perspective, they're pissed because if it's in the bill, like I still contend that if it was in that $1.9 trillion COVID bill, they would vote for it, even if it was in there. And why? Because they would go to their constituents and they would say, I was against that. I was against the raising the minimum wage. I know that hurts small businesses, but at the same time, there's X number of other dollars for small businesses, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to make sure that people got their money. And so I took it. I swallowed it. But
The villain is Biden in this situation. This obscures it. Biden should have said.
But it also, here's the negative impact. I am not sympathetic with Manchin and Sinema, but the fact is they exist. You know you're going to lose that vote, but you're making them pay a political price. But to what end? To what end? Are they going to be more inclined to vote for something like that in the future? Probably not. They're going to go up there and make a show of it by saying, F you for making me take this vote, F you. And that's what she's doing. And that doesn't help us in the long run or in the short run, in any run.
Because she's less likely to change her vote now, especially because she has the cover of those 6 other senators who did it just to protect Joe Biden, who did it just. And this is why I disagree with Bernie here. I don't like this strategy. It should have made it just about them. Make it just about them. Then they have to pay the political price. Just like when Kamala Harris went on West Virginia TV and went on Arizona TV. And then what do you know? Now they're in favor of the stimulus checks. They could have done that for the $15 minimum wage and overruled the parliamentarian or made them make that vote. I don't think they would have. I'm with you, Sam. I don't think they would have held up that $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. But now you've muddied the waters. The villain's there. The primary villain here was Biden for not bucking the parliamentarian and making them make that choice. So I don't agree. I wish they didn't strip it. I don't understand.
Yeah. Here is Mitch McConnell, with that said, talking about how the $1.9 trillion relief bill is unnecessary because everything's going fine, everybody. You're fine. You're fine. 1 in 5 people can't pay their rent. You're fine.
We are already on track to bounce back from this crisis. That's not because of this bill. It's because of our work last year. It's the trend this new Democratic government inherited. We're going to come roaring back, and mostly not because of this bill. In fact, in some ways, in spite of this bill.
How is that possible? We're going to come back in spite of the bill where we're putting all this money into the economy. He doesn't have any talking points for this.
It's so unconvincing.
Doesn't have any talking points. He just wants to be, and incidentally, there's a report that he is trying to whip votes in the Kentucky state legislature to change the way replacements for senators who retire are done. Right now, it's by the governor, who is, as you know, a Democrat. He wants them to change the law so that it's the Republican legislatures. And that is usually an indication, I'm trying to think of where we saw that before, an indication that he may be exiting. And he just, put it up
Well,
there.
he's like, I've done my life's work, right? Democrats refused to eliminate the filibuster, and that allowed us to basically pass all the tax cuts that we need through reconciliation. And I made sure that none of Obama's that Merrick Garland didn't get on the Supreme Court, and I put all my young conservatives into the Supreme Court, cemented that for decades. My corporate donors are very happy, and now my wife is in under some sort of investigation, and so maybe it's time for me to bow out now. Again, like the most effective lawmaker of the past, like 50 years, 25 years.
No, I wouldn't say lawmaker. I would say he is the most effective Senate majority leader because what laws did he pass? He got tax cuts. That's it.
Okay.
He stacked the courts, and that is what he was his most effective do. And he did that because he was a majority leader, and he was a very effective, not necessarily in making laws, but in inhibiting and obstructing and putting judges on there. All
And
right,
I just one last point about him. I just wonder if he sees the writing on the wall here in terms of like there's no veneer of fiscal conservatism left. They've worn it all thin. They've sanded it down, and Trump just exploded the whole thing too. So all of the things that he cares so deeply about, deregulation, tax cuts for the rich, whatever, it's really hard to do it with when the media isn't buying their deficit stuff anymore. After he's maybe worn out his welcome of lies, if that makes sense. And maybe he senses that because he's,
I think it's more just a question of like, what is there left for him to do? I think he probably made the decision when they didn't win the Senate. There's no point. I mean, he'd only be playing defense now, and he just, why stick around to play defense when you just scored so many touchdowns, right? Like,
he's Tom Brady, right? He's already got those 7 rings. Maybe.
But when would he get that other ring? Because he would have to wait for a Republican president in 2024.
Exactly.
The guy's not getting younger, and he's not going to do that. And so why stay around to play defense? Let's play this clip because we got to get out of here in about 10 minutes or so. For a long time, I'm not speaking for you, Emma. I'm speaking for myself. I was hesitant to criticize Glenn Greenwald in a sort of general way because for a long time I had a lot of respect for the work that he did. Not just people can have issues about whether how much reporting he did. He was fortunate, whatever. He was a very I thought strong voice for a decade or so, and I
totally agree with you.
And I think it's quite possible I gave him his first, nationwide media hit on Air America back in the day. Very possible, probably likely, actually. And he was a guy I really appreciated. I would see that, he would get under people's skin, and but it was all, I think, I think he did it in a thoughtful way, and then things started going off the rails a little bit. There was, there's been criticism over the years that has sort of made me sort of question certain things. It was a Twitter, I think he's gone now. I think it was Rancid Tarzi, who was very critical of Greenwald for the way that he monetized the Snowden information. And that
to me, that's more okay. But the reporting was so brave that it's just like we all monetize our stuff.
I understand. But I'm just sort of giving the evolution of sort of certainly the stuff that he did down in he's talking about Lula here and in Brazil, under a law threat from the Bolsonaro regime. But that was, over time, things became a little bit sideways. And I think he got very upset when he was critical of Obama and got bumped more or less from MSNBC, where he would go on to the shows, some of the shows that I wouldn't go on. And then, we are in Jay Johnstone territory on some level here, where things go off the rails a little bit. Here he is on a Daily Caller show. Ostensibly, he approaches these audiences I don't know what he's supposedly going on there, but I don't know how you can defend these statements as being anything other than disingenuous. Here it is. It's a long clip. Do we have to play the whole thing to get the context?
We can move through it, I guess.
Okay.
But
all right. Start playing it.
We should.
Different parts of the democratic world. And I'm going to touch a little bit on the comments you just made about the evolution of the center left in Brazil. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your husband is affiliated with the Socialism and Liberty Party. That's correct, right?
I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Okay. No, I just want to double check before I ask this. So why do you think the idea of socialism, both as it's framed by the right and the left in America, varies so drastically from what we've seen in, Brazil, other Latin American countries, even countries in Europe? Is that just because of, the huge play that identity politics has in America? I'm curious about that distinction and how it's evolved into something that doesn't really look like socialism anywhere else in the world, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, in Brazil, for instance, the Workers' Party was founded by Lula. He grew up in extreme poverty. He was, I think, the 8th of 9 children. He was illiterate until the age of 10. He went to work in a factory, famously lost one of his fingers, became a very charismatic labor leader, and ran for president 3 times and almost won more or less each of the 3 times, but didn't. And then the 4th time he ran in 2002, he realized, if I want to get elite sectors of society not completely against me, but even kind of comfortable, I need to moderate my economic policy. And so he ran as his vice presidential running mate with a banker, an actual, austerity advocate.
Pause it for a quick. So I have this Brian Mayer from Telesur. No, Glenn, Lula's VP was not an austerity advocating banker, as you told the Daily Caller. He was a textile factory owner turned senator who economically was a center-right Keynesian, an olive branch to business elites, yes, but not a banker. So go on.
That's a weird mistake to make.
It's not a mistake, right? I mean, it's like part of he's trying to build up the narrative he's about to say.
But I mean, how does he think he's going to get away with that? It's just a weird mistake to make.
Because he's on the Daily Caller.
I guess, but go ahead.
Banker just to calm international markets and make people less concerned about what his presidency would look like. And when he got into power, people were petrified that he was going to become like Cuba or Venezuela. He was a supporter of Chavez and Castro, but he always said, my form of leftism is not the one that erodes civil liberties. It's not communism. I believe that there should be a free market. We need that to generate growth. I just believe in a more equitable distribution of resources. And he innovated these social programs that even, kind of like think tanks, capitalist think tanks and journals like The Economist to this day praise, including one where women who are single mothers who are raising children get a monthly payment as long as they can demonstrate that their children have been vaccinated and are regularly going to school. So it incentivizes them to make sure their children aren't lost into the society, are doing the things that make them healthy and educated, and only then do they get this payment.
Pause it for 1 second.
Brazilian.
Just be clear what that is. Just be clear what that is, right? I mean, can you imagine the outrage in this country if vaccinations for COVID were tied in with a government payment?
Yeah. And also let me just quickly say too, this is sped up 1.5.
Right. Yeah. We sped it up just a little bit. Okay. Now here comes the pivot. Go.
I rocketed under Lula. The rich did very well and got very comfortable with him, which is why he overwhelmingly got elected. I think that's what you're seeing. I mean, obviously the word socialist carries a lot of baggage from the Cold War. It evokes on purpose the Soviet Union or, Castro or Chavez, Pol Pot, people like that, kind of the Mao. But I think what you're seeing is this kind of hybrid socialism that really is about nothing more than trying to sandpaper the edges off of neoliberalism. And I, would describe a lot of people on the right as being socialists. I would consider Steve Bannon to be a socialist. I would consider the 2016 iteration of Donald Trump, the candidate, to be a socialist based on what he was saying. I consider Tucker Carlson to be a socialist. Now if you have Governor Cuomo.
We don't need to go much further.
I can't watch anymore.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: is that first off, shaving the edges off of neoliberalism. I mean, and I don't. I think most people who listen to this show, and I don't think that most socialists would consider me a socialist. You know, maybe I'm I guess what is this, a sock dem or something. But the idea that a socialist is just looking to shave off the rough edges of neoliberalism is just absurd. And the idea that in any way there was any, like, what proposals did Donald Trump or Steve Bannon or does Tucker Carlson ever made that come even remotely close to what they're talking about? I mean, you want to talk about payments to people who have children. Well, you can look at the $1.9 trillion bill that was just passed, where there's going to be, over the course of the year, if you have children under age 6, you're going to get $3,600 over the course of the year. They may dole it out, not quite clear yet, $300 a month or something to that effect. 6 to 18, $3,000. It's 1 year. Biden has already said publicly that he is in favor of extending this and trying to increase the, have it go longer. And certainly there's Democratic support for this. And I don't know that anybody would call that, it's a socialistic policy, but I don't know anybody would call Joe Biden a socialist.
He's deliberately conflating anti-establishment rhetoric, or like the perception of populism, which is what Steve Bannon and Donald Trump represent and Tucker Carlson cosplays in, with socialism. I mean, that's not a political argument. That's like an aesthetic. That's the most aesthetic, surface level argument I can think of, and it's tracking. It tracks with what the media, the mainstream media that Glenn critiques, engages in, where it's like purely how people posture themselves and devoid of what's connected to policy. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean the truth. I would like to get someone from the Socialism and Liberty Party from Brazil on that to maybe answer that question a little bit better than Glenn Greenwald would, because I wonder, because he's speaking in the name of his partner's political party, and frankly, I wonder what they think about that.
But here's the other question: who is that for? Because it is not impossible for me to imagine that Glenn's argument is like, well, I'm on there and I'm talking to a right-wing audience, and I am trying to convince them that the word socialism isn't so dangerous. And that I can imagine defenders of him or him himself saying that. But let's be clear. Glenn Greenwald knows that we're going to play that clip. Glenn Greenwald knows that clip is going to travel. I don't even know that we're going to play it, but he knows that clip's going to travel, right? Like, he understands how social media works. He understands how media works. People aren't silly. He knows who's going to get that attention. Well, you ask yourself, is he going to convince right-wing people that, and what is the value of right-wing people thinking that Steve Bannon's a socialist, or that Donald Trump's a socialist, or that Tucker Carlson's a socialist? Like, what is the value if I'm a right-winger and you've convinced me, Glenn, they're socialists? Do I embrace socialism, or do I just keep supporting those guys and maybe think that the other right-wingers, maybe I like them too?
Well,
this is designed for a left-wing audience. This is designed to convince, and I think that, he throws in Bannon and Trump maybe, to convince people Tucker Carlson's your guy, to play off of his populism, his critique of corporatism. And that's what it's designed to do. That's what it's designed to do. And Glenn is sophisticated and smart enough to know what he's doing. That's my opinion.
I think like the way he runs interference for Josh Hawley's minimum wage thing, and then he wants to obscure the actual.
By the
left
way, Josh
force.
Hawley just voted against the minimum wage.
Of course he did. But like it seems like Glenn has this project I'm beginning to see pronounced that is to obscure what the actual left is saying, and. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like and to say that all those leftists that don't consider Bannon and Tucker like the socialist and see the actual, forest for the trees like I do, they're doing it wrong. And that left is this cancel culture. They probably watch MSNBC. Like that's the message he wants to send. That's the attitude he's conveying now.
And understand what that entire response was a function of identity politics. The question was about identity politics. And it leads him to say the real socialists are Bannon, Trump, and Tucker Carlson. This is a project that he's got. I mean, make no mistake about it. It is a project. I don't know what is behind this.
It's very sad. It's very sad. I have no joy in just like,
Well, I take no joy in it, but I don't feel any sadness anymore. I'm like that's
you're in a new stage.
Do we have his border comments? Do we have the is there immigration comments later, or don't we have that? Or am I misremembering that?
I don't understand how someone can be someone who had such, I think broke through the media in such a very profound way and was, a really strong voice, maybe not even a leftist voice, but anti-establishment in a constructive way, can be so warped by online culture that this is what we see. I mean, and it's a phenomenon that we've seen now a few times. It's like Michael Tracy's a great example, but never thought that would be Glenn.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Glenn Greenwald had his political awakening during the Iraq War, so he says, which is the same time I did, and he's 20 years older than me. So I don't know. His work in unauthorized disclosure is good, but his commentary, I think, has always been a bit.
I mean, some of the stuff that he had, and he was critical of corporate Democrats too at that time. But there was, putting aside where he came from, I don't know. I just saw Jay Johnstone, pictures of Jay Johnstone. Who knows what happens in people's lives and where they go and whatnot. But now, for me, I'm going to assess what he is saying as someone who has an audience of maybe decreasing leftists, but still some audience and some currency with people on the left. And, the only upside is, and maybe he knows it, he lost a lot of real socialists with that comment, legitimate socialists. He lost them. He is going for, these disaffected sort of, progressives who maybe have a tough time with, sort of so-called woke culture, whatever that is, cancel culture, the idea that maybe, he is going for the same, a crowd of people that Jordan Peterson's going for. He's just providing them a slightly different product.
Oh, he's engaging with Brett Weinstein and stuff on Twitter now. It's yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, look, folks, we're out of time today. I'm going to do a couple of IMs and then we got to get out of here. We will be back on Monday. Nim Chimpsky, is that John Benjamin's voice in the intro? It is indeed. He has been the voice of the Majority Report for 16 years. I owe him a couple of bucks. One in Burbank. I appreciate the fact that Emma's going all out to fill Michael's shoes by texting in sick yesterday after drinking too much the night before. Michael would be proud. Rest in peace.
That's a weighty accusation, and I firmly deny it.
Demian, Andy needs to get one of those great 80s mall portraits of himself with a cool, soft focus double image. That's 3 Andys. Chardonnay socialist, huh? I don't know. Andy Kindler's microphone is made out of wood. I just thought his jokes were. I like it. Shore rap. Random Dr. Seuss. Guess who's the caboose? Who does Emma think Russell Wilson will get traded to? And please don't say the Raiders. As a Broncos fan, I can't deal with it going up against Mahomes, Herbert, and then Wilson twice each season.
I mean, apparently it's like a $37 million cap hit for the Seahawks to trade him this offseason because he has a guaranteed salary from them. So I just like, they're going to have to work it out for a year, and then next year maybe it's like inevitable. Why would you want to go to the Raiders? They have no defense. I mean, like, this is why I'll keep it within 20 seconds. Like, Deshaun Watson, 100% behind him, 100%. And he seems to want to go to a place where he can build something and wants to win. This is like a Russell wants to leave because Sierra wants to be in a bigger market. I find it off-putting, and they win every year. It's just a little weird to me.
I had no idea what that meant. Melissa from Chicago. By the way, Hassan Piker got shingles, so Emma might want to be careful. Oh, Jesus. I gotta be careful. Asiak, I'd like to point out that the character Jimmy Pesto would have totally gone to that January 6th insurrection. Can you picture Pelosi's pedestal next to a bag of Bob's shaved-off mustache? Jay Tingle, I recall reading Mamet in Esquire in the 80s, and he had intense issues about his masculinity then. I'm convinced like so much of this is about that. Lion Holtz, the New York YMCA camp in Orange County is being sold for $5 million for financial reasons, but real estate there is far cheaper than NYC. It's a shame they're taking away. That's not Frost Valley you're talking about. I hope to God that's not. New Wrangler, Jimmy Pesto got radicalized, but Hugo has been unradicalizing people for a while now. Force the sub. Matt, we can have Kershaws or Urshoes. And the final IM of the day. I know. Final IM of the day. Left is black. Why is there so much frustration with the strategy by Bernie to force the vote on the $15 minimum wage? Biden was never going to let Harris overrule the parliamentarians, so there's no way he could have gotten the vote as part of the package. Is there? We've already explained it.
We explained it. It diverts the blame where it should be to other people.
Yeah, we did it. You did it already. You already anticipated that. Brendan, Matt, Emma, good job today. See you folks on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid.